nationality is tied with ethnicity. So, and I think it's time we return to understanding this. We already understand this, well, at least the smart people do. All the dumb people, and I don't want to make that clear distinction because it's not that they're dumb. They're just like a lot of them are misguided. Some of them truly are just dumb, but some of them are just blinded by not realizing the simple truth. A nation is its people. Without a people, it can't be a nation. Okay, the nation can't be a nation without its people. So that when I say nationality is tied to ethnicity, that's because, again, this goes back to the concept of a nation being its people. Well, what is a nation's people? Right? You look at Japan. Japan is for the Japanese. And we understand this because Japan is still majority Japanese. They don't really like accepting foreigners into the country. They don't really like them having permanent stay. They make it very hard for foreigners to even live in Japan. Why? Because that's how a nation stays a nation, of its people. Right? If all of a sudden there were a bunch of fucking Americans, and look, I love our people, but if all of a sudden a bunch of Americans went over to Japan, and a bunch of Canadians went over to Japan, a bunch of Mexicans went over to Japan, and now Japan had a bunch of fucking different groups, a bunch of different population groups inside of its country, and they're all fighting, they're all advocating for their own things, right? The Americans want more gun rights, the Mexicans, I don't know, man. I don't know what they would advocate for. The Canadians, they want what? I don't know. Does Japan have free healthcare? I'm not sure they do. I actually don't know. But let's say they don't, just for the record's sake. And so they would advocate for that, right? But there's these groups, these population that are advocating for different things to change Japan in a manner of which the Japanese people did not want. And so, going back to this, nations are made up of their people. But to define their people, you have to identify their ethnicities. If you look at, again, we'll get away from Japan. You look at China. Is it representative of the Chinese? If a black person goes to China, they're not now Chinese. If a black person is granted citizenship to China, that doesn't make them Chinese. If they get a passport to Syria, that doesn't make them Syrian, okay? A nation is tied with ethnicity. A fucking Middle Easterner, no, let's say a fucking Paki, okay? They're essentially with a little bit better hygiene, okay? The difference between India and Pakistan is like nothing. They're the same country, just one fucks animals without condoms, the other fucks an animal occasionally with a condom. Okay, they're the same in my eyes. They're both fucking disgusting. Anyways, if a Pakistan person gets an American passport, does that make them American? Well, the misguided among you would say yes, because, well, they're American now. They're a part of the American country. Us, however, who understand this concept, would say, no, they're not American. They have American citizenship, they have an American passport, but they are not American, right? And going by this standard, by the way, I am not American. I'm Mexican. I am a Mexican American, and there has to be that distinction because I'm not American. Now, I love this country. I speak English. I was born into this country. I was raised on its customs, on its culture, surrounded by its people. So I say I'm American in the sense that this is the only nation I've known, but I am not American in the sense of when you think of an American. An American is a white individual, right, from the original colonizers, from the original settlers. So anyone who was from France, from the UK, from Germany, from any of those like European countries that came and were settlers, those are Americans, right? And even then there's kind of like a debate, right? Because they weren't really accepting of like the Irish or the Italians. So but now they're kind of more accepting of those groups. So are the Irish and Italians like actual Americans? The originals, right? The settlers would probably disagree with me, but in today's time, I would say yes. And you can kind of expand on like who's American in a way, in a sense, because America is so large, right? But its original stock is white people, is Europeans. So the Americans are white. Okay, if you're not white, if you're not from European descent, then you're not an American. And I would say, I would even go as far as to say, as someone from, oh, well, I'm first generation, anyways, but if someone from, let's say, Sweden, and like they're an actual Swedish person and not, you know, they're an actual Swedish person, they come over here, right? They get an American passport. I would even go as far as to say is that they're more American than I am, right? Even though they're like me in the sense that they're first generation. Well, they're not really first gen. Their children will be first generation, but regardless, I would still say they're, more towards leaning towards American than I am. And you see this, right, with all sorts of groups in America. In Chicago, you have what's it called, Little Mexico, right? All of these areas, like it's a big area, and all the people really speak there are Spanish. They have a bunch of Spanish stores and taco places and basically essentially everything that is representative of the Hispanic person. But that distinction shows that they're not American because they're still identifying with their ethnic group, right? Every time that Mexico, in terms of like nationality, wins something, they still have that Mexican pride, even though they're supposed to be American. It doesn't make sense. Why would you be proud of a nation that doesn't serve you, of a country that you don't live in or even haven't been in, and you know nothing about? Right? Your parents are from there. My parents are from Mexico, right? But I don't really know Mexico. I've been there once when I was very young, around 8 or 9, but I don't really know Mexico. Mexico has not served me. Mexico has not been my home. So I don't give a fuck about Mexico in the sense that when they do something in terms of like the global stage, I don't care because I don't view myself as Mexican in the sense that, I don't care about the country's achievements. I am Mexican because it's my identity, it's my ethnic group, but I don't care about the nation's achievements. But you still see other Americans, other Mexican Americans who do care. Or with ICE protests, right? What flags are they flying? They're flying, all of these fucking Latin American flags, right? All of these Hispanic flags. And in particular, you're more likely to see the Mexico flag. It's like, wait. Let me get this straight. You're flying a flag of a nation, again, you haven't lived in, of a nation you don't know, of a people you don't know. I mean, you're of their people, you're of that tribe, but again, you didn't live in Mexico, you didn't grow up in Mexico, so you don't know what it's like. But yet you're flying their flag in protest to not being removed from this country and being sent back to that country. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous that you're fighting to represent a country that you don't know. And so, what this causes, at least here in America, and really any country that has, that's agreed with this concept of multiculturalism and lets in a bunch of ethnic groups, the problem you end up having is, well, what is the nation's people? Is it everybody? So then everybody, every culture is fighting to be the dominant one, right? You have, like, for example, the blacks, right? How they spread their hip hop and all this other nonsense, right? Because we, as a nation, we used to listen to much more classical music. The people used to listen to much more singing songs, right? like Frank Sinatra, and then that era where it was just a bunch of singing, not rapping. But then what happens? The blacks introduce their culture, or they have a hip hop thing, a hip hop phase. But what does that do? Well, it impacts the white people. It impacts the other cultures. And now what do you have? Well, now you have white rappers, right? Like you have, like, look at Eminem, right? He grew up around, and so now he raps. Or he has, he's creating music in a manner in which is popular to them and not his people. um you have Hispanics who are rapping when that's not to our people. Our people don't rap. Our people, when we do create music, it's either dancing music or it's more of a storytelling kind of, the way the music flows. It's in like a matter of storytelling, because a lot of songs actually have stories to them when you're actually listening to the lyrics and you aren't fucking dancing. But so that culture influences others, right? So then it's just a battle amongst cultures. And then when they're not battling, well, then they separate. Because as good as multiculturalism sounds on paper, it doesn't really work, because people are inherently tribal and they want to stick with their tribe. And if you don't stick with your tribe, well, what happens? You end up losing two tribes. So I don't know if I've stated this, but if I haven't, I will now. I'm very against race mixing. You shouldn't be mixing. You shouldn't be mixing of, different ethnicities. You shouldn't be mixing with anything that isn't your tribe, right? Um, and I find it repulsive. And I didn't really know this, right? Again, like, I was in the misinformed crowd until very recently, but ultimately it is a loss of two cultures when you mix, or not two cultures, two ethnicities. So if you have red and you have blue, I'm just going to give you a very simple analogy. If you have red and blue and you mix them and you make purple, well, cool, you now have purple. But what did you lose? You lost red and blue to make one color, right? That's exactly how it works for humans. If you have a white person and a black person and they have a child, well, their child is mixed. But that child is neither white or black, right? They're neither. They are a mixture. You say you're mixed, but you are not white and you are not black. Your unique group is now mixture, and in particular the mixture of white and black, but you are not either white or black. So yeah, so this is why you should be against mixing, because it is a loss of identity. And the biggest people who had this problem are the whites. The biggest people who had this problem are the whites. Again, because I believe it's more in their genetics, more in their nature to be more sympathetic and more caring and more open-minded to things. But when you have a bunch of white people who reproduce with not white people, well, what do you have? You don't have more white people. You have a mixture. And what happens? Well, the white population goes down, right? And in the past, the term race traitor was used by not the best of people, but truly the term race traitor is a good term to use for you turning your back on your people, you turning your back on your tribe and abandoning your tribe. When you do this, by the way, neither tribe will accept you. So it's a sense of isolation. Because your child, again, will end up being a mixture. Your child is neither white nor black. So when the white people don't want to be friends with your child, the white children don't want to be friends with your child, that's normal. That's tribalism. They don't want to be they don't want to be friends with someone that's not a part of their tribe. When the blacks don't accept you because you've been mixed with the white, right? That's normal. That's tribalism. So you were a race traitor for nothing, and you've essentially, right, ruin the life of your child. Because a lot of, okay, if you didn't know, a lot of mixed individuals have a loss of identity. They don't really know how to identify. Because again, they're a mixture, you know, and this isn't really talked about enough, but mixed children do have a sense of isolation because they're not when someone asks you what are you, you say you're mixed, but what does that even mean? You're mixed, you're a mixture of two people, so then you're not really either or. Like which side do you lean more towards? You know what I mean? Versus like someone like me, when someone asks me like, "Hey, what are you?" I say I'm Mexican because both my parents were Mexican. They were of the same tribe. If someone asks you, dear viewer, I hope it would be as simple as you would say, "Oh, I'm white. Oh, I'm black. Oh, I'm Asian." You know, and then you can distinct, right? Go into the specific group, right? Like if you're asking what kind of white person I am, both my parents were French. Both my parents were, uh, you know, I don't even know for the blacks. Both my parents were from Kenya. Both, let's see here, for the Asians, both of my parents were Vietnamese. But like you can go into the distinction after you've made the claim of being part of a specific group. But overall, these mixed people, they can't do that. So there's a sense of isolation. Ultimately, I'm just gonna wrap it up with this, and then get back to the topic of going back to talking about the nation's people. Um, if you keep mixing and mixing and mixing and mixing, well, guess what happens? The world turns brown. No one wants a world where all there is brown people. Okay, look, I love my people. Okay, I love Mexicans, but I don't want to see brown people everywhere I go or black people everywhere I go. I like seeing Asians. I like seeing whites. I like seeing, all these other specific groups that would disappear if all of us just kept mixing and mixing and mixing and mixing and mixing and mixing. All that would be left is black and brown, right? Because what happens when you mix the three primary colors, red, blue, and yellow? What do you get? You get brown. So when you keep mixing and mixing, it just dilutes the colors to just black and brown. So so yeah, just ultimately, I'm against mixing. We really shouldn't mix, and it's only a modern problem now, by the way, because back then there was no mixing. Not really, because you could only really be with someone who was like of your village or like of your kingdom. There really wasn't mixing because of how limited travel was. It was, if anyone could mix, it would be the ultra wealthy who could afford to bring people of foreign lands into their lands, right, and then reproduce with them. But really, a majority of people weren't mixing because it wasn't an issue they had to deal with. People were just separated by land, and therefore there was never a problem of mixing. So yeah. Anyways, going back, so back to a nation is its people and nationality being tied to ethnicity. That's a very important distinction everyone should be able to acknowledge and everyone should be able to make. Okay, if you go to Japan with again Japanese papers, does that make you Japanese? No. Okay, right? Because you have to be ethnically Japanese, to be considered Japanese. You can't just have Japanese citizenship and now you're Japanese. So, and this is why we have to get rid of a lot of non-Americans to let America become home of the Americans once again. And again, in America's case, it's a little different. It's a little different because we've had a bunch of groups of individuals in this nation for quite a while that maybe you can make an argument that some of the black families that have a history of being in this nation for hundreds of years, well, maybe we could classify them as Americans. Maybe they've been here for quite a while, but ultimately right? I would say that the real Americans are of European descent and or Europeans, right? If a European, like I said, if someone from Sweden comes over here, they have children, their children will be much more easily adaptable to America than someone from Africa coming over here, or maybe even someone from Japan coming over here, right? It's just the fact that, again, this nation was built by Europeans, so it's much more likely that a European is to integrate into society and integrate into the culture much more easy and faster than someone who is not of the tribe, of not, European descent. So this America is of Europeans, specifically for Europeans. Um, can it house other groups of people? Yeah. Again, it's not about making America only white. It's not about making America 100% white. Do some people want that? Yeah, I'm sure. But my ideal America would be having America's white population, European population, at 90 plus percent. So like 95, 96, 97%. And there's like, that 3% is divided amongst the Hispanics, amongst the blacks, amongst the Asians, right? Amongst all the other groups, but they make up a minority, a true minority in an all white nation. Because again, this nation was built by the whites. So it should be for the whites. And if it's not, right? And if it's not, then this is what this is why multiculturalism is dangerous. If it's not, well, what you end up having is a nation that is bound to change by whoever becomes the dominant. Like, for example, in Mexico used to be very pro gun, right? And then over time, we've kind of shifted the idea, at least the older Mexicans. I don't know about the new ones. I mean, at least me being influenced by American culture, I fucking love guns. I own several. But, my mom and, again, older Mexicans think that guns are equated with, like, drug dealers. Like, oh, you shouldn't have a gun unless, like, you're a bad person. Or, like, you're with the cartels, or, doing illegal things. So if a lot of Hispanics still have that same mindset and they come into this country, well, they could want to push for more gun control and or just complete restrictions of firearms, which goes against the Constitution. But that hasn't stopped the fucking that hasn't stopped politicians before, right? So you would have these issues of multiculturalism, right? The blacks, and I find this very interesting because it would punish them more often than not, but yet they still would, like, oftentimes talk about this. But black people tend to push for, like, severe punishment for committing crime. So, like, what you'll see is black people say, like, oh, if you I don't know, like, get caught stealing multiple times, we shouldn't give you multiple chances. We should just kill you or make you a prisoner forever. Like, a lot of black people have very harsh sentiments for prisoners or people who commit crime, and their punishments are a lot stricter than the European punishment, okay, or a lot harsher. Excuse me. Um, which again would be punishing their people more, and yet they're still very pro harsh punishments. So the nation will ultimately display the main people. The reason America still looks slightly like how it looked way back at its founding is because the European man and woman are still the majority in this nation. When that changes, it will start to change how America looks. Look at the United Kingdom. Look at all of the Western European countries who've been invaded by the Muslims, by all these people. Look at how their society has changed because of it, right? Their once high trust societies are no longer high trust, right? Look at how all of the fucking their people, the spike in rape has drastically increased because of all of these people, right? And there's also like this tension of like, you don't belong here, you're not a part of us, because again, ethnicity is tied to nationality, or nationality is tied to ethnicity. You have all of a sudden you have all these brown and black people claiming they're German, claiming they're French, claiming they're British. You're not fucking any of that. You're a from some third world country in Africa who needs to go back. Okay? And you're destroying, and they end up destroying these countries because they don't know high trust societies. They In Canada, they're starting to have, well, I think it's been going on, but it's much more rampant now. They have problems with their rivers now. Their rivers are being polluted by who? By who? By the fucking Indians, because they're living like they're still in fucking India, where you can just dump your trash wherever. Right? Because they're not Canadians. They don't know what it's like to actually take care of your land and your country and not just fucking dump trash in the river. So it's a part of their culture. It's a part of their customs. It's what they know. So again, you cannot have all of these different ethnic groups in one country because it causes division and it causes problems for everybody involved. Are there some people in these ethnic groups, like myself, who are intelligent and can look past ethnicity and not be tribal in the sense of like, oh, it's my people, so I'm gonna stick with my people. I can look past ethnicity and understand the bigger picture and understand that America needs to remain majority white, even though I'm not white, because of my intelligence. But a majority of my tribe, a majority of the Mexicans and or Hispanics can't look past tribalism. They can't acknowledge that America should be majority white because of its founding, because of who made this country how it is today, right? They can't do that because they're not intelligent enough to look past tribalism. So for the one good Hispanic, you have thousands of bad Hispanics who will remain tribal and want to stick amongst themselves. So multiculturalism is ultimately a net negative for any country that implements it. Has there been positives? Yes, right? I mean, the entertainment industry, these fucking monkeys, man, I tell you, they're good at playing sports. They're good at dribbling a ball. They're good at passing a ball. I mean, I mentioned hip hop earlier. Like, I fucking shouts out Kanye. You know what I mean? W blank rappers. They're good for entertainment, but that's about it. Everything else is a negative. They live off of welfare. They kill people. They rob people at extraordinary rates, right? And then they want to blame it. It's cause I'm poor and shit, man. It's cause I ain't got money. It's cause my great ancestor was a slave and shit, man. So they blame it on bullshit of why they're doing crimes. And then here's another problem that you have to kind of look past the surface level shit. I mean, I guess kind of at surface level, but you have to look past a little bit more and acknowledge that then there becomes a race problem, right? In a sense of like discrimination. So like, if you've witnessed a different race's culture and how they act, and now you don't want to, be around them, well, guess what? Good old multiculturalism says that's bad. Hey, how dare you be racist? How dare you say you don't want to live around black people or you don't want to live around Hispanics? That's racist. You can't do that, right? So what multiculturalism is, it forces you in a sense to like be around people you don't want to be around, right? I think it's the Fair Housing Act or some shit that you can't not sell a house to someone simply because of their ethnicity. Or I think it's other things as well, but like you can't not sell a house to a black person because you don't like black people, right? And so what this does is it invades into neighborhoods, right, that were once majority white or majority homogenous, and now you have to deal with this fucking loud black family, or you have to deal with these fucking Hispanics who are throwing parties, and they have fucking coolers and their fucking music's blaring loud as shit on a random Thursday at 4 p.m. The dad just got off work, the friends are coming over, and now they're just fucking partying till 2 in the morning because it's some fucking baby's 2nd-year-old birthday. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. So, but because again, multiculturalism, it forces you to live under these things and live with these things. And if you don't want to deal with that, they look at you, point the finger, and call you a racist and try to, like, attack you for your beliefs. It's ridiculous. Like, how are you gonna attack me for not wanting to live or not wanting to live around, right? I don't want to live around these people, right? Like, if I could, I want to live in an all white neighborhood, you know, because I fucking I love how quiet it is. You know, if you've never entered a white neighborhood, day and night difference. Day and night difference. Even the poor white neighborhoods, there's a day and night difference between Hispanic neighborhoods and black neighborhoods. Hell, even fucking Asians aren't as good as the whites in terms of, like, you know, how the houses look, right? The lawns are always fucking mowed and cut, right? The houses get sprayed and cleaned, you know, I'm sure every couple of years or something. So that way, you know, all the gunk that builds up over time gets sprayed away and the houses look nice. You know, when you go around in Christmas time, they put up Christmas ornaments and Christmas lights. You know, that they always go all out for Halloween and other events, right? Versus a Hispanic neighborhood, you know, they were kind of they didn't want to put up Christmas lights this year. They didn't want to bring out the ladder and, you know, put up the lights this year. You go to a black neighborhood, fucking forget it. You might see one or two houses, right, with lights, but that's about it. The only thing they have is the fucking Christmas tree, and they probably don't even have like not even like a fake tall plastic tree. You know what they have? They have one of those fucking $15 short 8-inch Christmas trees. That's what they have. so so yeah, man. uh just the differences between how the people live is night and day. And but multiculturalism punishes you for not wanting to deal with them. It's fucking ridiculous. So race becomes a problem in and of itself, right? The identifiable way to deal with people is to acknowledge their ethnicity and then go based on that. But you can't do that because multiculturalism says that's bad. You shouldn't do that. Which is why we have these retarded liberals who don't want to punish black people for committing crimes because they're black and they don't want to seem racist. They let out these fucking animals, these chimps, who commit countless felonies, countless crimes, but because they're black, the judge gives them a slap on the wrist, or the judge says, oh, it's because of a white supremacy and all this other bullshit that these fucking monkeys commit these crimes. It's like, no, bitch. The reason Jamal here killed people is because he's fucking black, and it's what they do. It's in their DNA. They're very violent individuals. Okay, there was no reason for Jamal to kill them. And then you know what his Jewish defense attorney is gonna be? Your Honor, my client's insane. Like, they're gonna try to plead insanity so that this motherfucker can be let out. And even if he doesn't get let out, well, because he pled insanity, he's not just gonna go to fucking prison where he belongs. He's gonna go to a fucking mental rehabilitation station, and then they're gonna let him out early because he was doing good or whatever the fuck. Like George Floyd, this fucking monkey, he had a long fucking rap sheet. Why was George Floyd out in public society with how long his fucking rap sheet was? Why was he out? Doesn't fucking make sense. You know why? It's because these fucking liberal judges were fucking constantly letting who commit crimes and never really punish them because they don't want to seem racist. And if you didn't know, right, because you thought George Floyd was some kind of fucking hero because you're retarded, he pointed a gun at a pregnant woman's belly. Okay? So your so-called hero is not a hero. I'm not going to get into the story. I can, and I would, but It's been done 100,000 times already. Okay. If I, by the way, if I was emperor, I would, I would fire that judge who gave the ruling to the police officer that, he should go to prison. I would not only fire that judge, but I would put that judge in prison, and then I would let out the police officer who was in prison for, murdering or whatever the fuck George Floyd. I would let him out and reinstate him if he wanted to be reinstated as a police officer. But if not, then he can just, but he'll just be free. He'll just be a free citizen. But that judge is going to fucking prison. Cause what do you mean? What do you mean that was your ruling? Anyways, holy shit, I've been yapping. So just to summarize everything, ethnicity and nationality are linked. You cannot separate them. Okay? A nation is comprised of its people, and you must be able to identify its people. You cannot say its people are of this group and this group and this group and this group, because that doesn't work. Okay? That doesn't work. There needs to be a sense of identity, right? Like in the Roman Empire, everybody was just Roman because they were conquered by the Romans. Okay? There was no, like, if you tried to keep your tribe's original identity, they didn't tolerate that shit. There was none of that. Okay, that's why the Roman Empire was sort of stable for a long time, because everyone's identity was simply Roman, because there was no, you could not be proud or like have any remnants of your previous tribe before you were conquered by the Romans. That's why it was, everyone was Roman, even though not really everyone was Roman. And that's what they try to do in America. Say everyone's American, but they're not. They're not all Americans. They clearly don't have the values of the American system and of the original founding fathers. So, yeah, and I'm just going to end the video. I'm not going to get into how the founding fathers were tolerant of, slavery and other shit. That's because then I'm a yap for another like 20 minutes.